Yet, they're attacking the unemployed, attacking Americans on food stamps, and attacking the poor. It may fire up their base, but it's a heartless thing to do, and it's wrong. Joining me now is Congresswoman Karen Bass and Nia Malika Henderson. Thank you both for coming on the show. You know, Congresswoman, Bill O'Reilly and his ilk say that poverty is a result of poor decision-making. I mean, what do you say to that?
Well, you know, on the one hand, I do think it's cruel and all, but I also think it's profoundly ignorant. And that's the thing that is so shocking, that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and newscasters like O'Reilly do not have a clue how poor people live. The fact of the matter is, the majority of poor folks work. The problem is that people might work 1, 2, 3 jobs, but they don't earn enough now in order to support themselves. And that's a problem of our society overall.
And I think that's a critical point. The majority of poor people that live under the poverty line work. Now, you've got some real battles in Congress this fall. This is not just guys talking, firing up the base on talk shows.
No.
You have Congress people who are trying to legislate based on these kind of fields.
Well, absolutely. And I know when I come back in a couple of weeks, what we're going to have to face are the cuts that they're trying to impose to food stamps. And it's not just the cuts, but the amendments that individual Congress members are introducing really reflects the narrative of what they think of poor folks.
Give me an example of some of the amendments that are most disturbing to you.
A couple of examples. One, a work requirement that people work a certain number of hours a week in order to qualify for food stamps. Once again, the narrative that they try to project is though people are at home watching TV. People are working minimum wage jobs. They're working at fast food restaurants, which is why you see the actions that are taking place today.
About the wages at these fast food places.
Another amendment requires drug testing. Now, why would we waste all this taxpayers' money on drug tests for what? Again, the narrative is that people who are poor use drugs, are felons, and don't want to work. Now, and that's just ignorant.
Nia Malika, the fact that you have a guy like Bill O'Reilly, who has a long history of blaming the poor for their own poverty. Listen to this.
There's almost always a reason attached to it. It is not the capitalist system's fault. It's usually personal responsibility or something like that.
And the causes are these: poor education, addiction, irresponsible behavior, and laziness. The majority of blacks want money spent to level the playing field, to redistribute income from the white establishment.
There are 50% of the voting public who want stuff. They want things. And who is going to give them things? President Obama.
Now, Nia Malika, does the moderate Republicans that you cover agree with this? I mean, saying that the majority of blacks want money spent to level the playing field and to redistribute income from the white establishment. 50% of the voters want stuff. Do moderate Republicans believe this and follow this kind of rhetoric?
No, I think you hear from moderate Republicans that they're certainly more in the mold of George Bush, who came into office, or at least campaigned on compassionate conservatism, and campaigned against the House Republicans at the time, saying that he didn't think it was right to balance the budget on the backs of the poor. I think another thing we're missing here in terms of what poverty looks like in America, it's increasingly in the suburbs. And if you look at polls out recently, 4 out of 5 of adults in this country will at some point struggle with poverty, possibly have to accept food stamps. So this, I mean, I think sometimes some people sort of focus on this old idea of poverty, that it's in certain areas in the inner city. I think we have Ronald Reagan in many ways to thank for that consistent image about poverty and about people who are poor and taking advantage of the system. It's just not true. Poverty is much more widespread. It crosses much more demographics, racially. than it has in many, many years, and it's very sad. I think you're going to see somebody like Cory Booker, who looks like he will be the next senator from New Jersey. He's somebody who wants to come in and really talk about the poverty. The Democratic Party, I think, for many years had not wanted to talk about poverty, and it looks like, along with folks like Karen Bass and Cory Booker, they're going to have these champions to talk about poverty.
Well, you know, I've been around the country and I've seen things on the ground, and this is atrocious, Congresswoman. People are really hurting. This is real. And I'm talking about people that get up and go to work every day, that do everything they're supposed to do. Let me show you some of the priorities, how it's hurting real Americans, putting politics over people. Watch what cuts to Head Start is doing.
Head Start is going to enroll fewer children because of sequester-mandated budget cuts.
These are the most, devastating cuts that we've ever seen, the sequestration.
I had my 4 children with me when I was homeless at the time.
They make you feel bad about being poor, even though you're doing everything right. Like, I'm going back to school, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but you can't get a break.
We need this program because they help them, they give them the support that they need, they give them that little boost. There are kids that needed a lot of help and they got it from this program.
And this is a priority, Congresswoman, of some of your colleagues across the aisle, to cut back on Head Start when you have people saying how it really hurts and it really interferes with the future of our country in terms of our young people.
Absolutely. And I think it's also very important that we look at the ideology that drives this, because remember how we thought when Romney made his quote-unquote slip about the 47%? Right. We see that that's actually the driving ideology for the Republican Party, which basically says there really shouldn't be a safety net. That safety net should be handled by churches, by nonprofits, but the government really shouldn't be involved in it. However, when it comes to them, you know that 14 Republicans receive farm subsidies totaling over $7.2 million. So when it comes to government money for people who are wealthy, well, we are okay with that. When it comes for government money for big business, we're okay with that. But they are trying to divest our society from the responsibility of the most vulnerable. And I think that's a fundamental change to our society, and one that I certainly won't stand for.
You know, Nia Malika, if you look at the cuts to Head Start, because of GOP fuel budget cuts, $400 million slashed from the budget, it will eliminate over 57,000 children from the program. And look at the Farm Bill, what it does to food stamps. It would cut $40 billion in funding. Up to 6 million people could lose assistance. These are very heartless things to do to people that are vulnerable. You say moderate Republicans don't agree with this. Why aren't they speaking up?
Well, I think that's a good question, and I think you give those numbers, and it really is children, right, who benefit from some of these programs. If you look at food stamps, most of the folks who are getting food stamps, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, they have children. And Head Start, certainly, I went to Head Start, certainly benefits those kids in those early education years that are so crucial. So I do think there's an opportunity for Republicans to speak up around these issues. And in some ways, I mean, you have, if you look at, for instance, what Rick Perry is doing down in Texas, a different issue around Obamacare. He doesn't agree with Obamacare, but he is at the same time trying to get $100 million in Obamacare to take care of the elderly and the disabled. So it does feel like there is some room for Republicans to frame this issue that in a way that works for them, in a way that resonates. Because again, this is about children. It's often about the elderly. It's often about the disabled. And this idea that the poor should be demonized, it just doesn't resonate with people.
Well, I hear you about the senator, but even a broke clock is right twice a day. Thank you, Nia Henderson and Congresswoman Karen Bass. Thank you for your time.